joined the registration list, but we hope they will join slowly by surely. And on behalf of the organizers, UN Women and UN Global Compact Denmark, and I would like to say good morning, good day to everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's session on how can the woman empowerment principle benefit your company. I know this session was very much awaited for each and every one of you. So without any further ado, I propose to start it. My name is Diana Rusu. I work as a policy specialist, and today I will be happy to moderate this session. I hope it will be a partnership. I hope we all will engage and will ask all the questions and everything we want to know. And together we will have an interesting session. So, as probably of you know, I am a proud employee of UN Women, the United Nations entity dedicated to gender equality and the empowerment of women, a global champion for women and girls. UN Women was established to accelerate progress on meeting their needs worldwide. And we know that this is even more important in COVID times. And our speakers throughout the presentation will mention why so and why the WEPs framework is the right framework to use during this time and always for all the business entities. This event was envisioned specifically for the Nordic countries, but we welcome all the participants, even if any of you are not currently based in the Nordic countries. All have a partnership of business kind, and they would like to know about peculiarities of business in the Nordics or how to engage with them via WEPs framework. So welcome everyone. In today's session, we will speak about women empowerment principles, and we will showcase how taking the WEPs journey help companies advance gender equality in the workplace, marketplace, and community. And of course, we will speak about women empowerment around all of this. This is the center of what we will discuss today. We have exciting panelists today, and I can't wait to start the program and to present each and every one of them. So here's today's agenda, and we hope you will stay from the end with us, and we will have an interesting and engaging session. So without any further ado, I would like to invite my dear colleague, Caroline Rosten, Director, Nordic Liaison Office, UN Women, to share some opening remarks. Caroline, over to you.
Thank you, Diana. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, thank you. So good afternoon, everyone here in the Nordic countries, and good morning to you in New York. As Diana said, I'm Caroline Rusten, and I'm Director for UN Women's Nordic Liaison Office based here in UN City in Copenhagen. So here in the Nordic Liaison Office, we drive resource mobilization, advocacy, and communication in the Nordic region. And through this work, we engage with governments, with the private sector, with parliamentarians, media, civil society, and also with other UN agencies resident here in UN City. So, as Diana said, we are responsible in the UN system for gender equality and women empowerment. But what's important for us to say, and what's important for the discussion today, is that we need to have everyone deliver on gender. That is the only way that we can reach the end of gender inequality by 2030. So this webinar today is about how you, as the private sector, can engage to help ensure that we reach SDG 5 on gender equality by 2030. So one of UN Women's key thematic area is women economic empowerment, and that includes women's access to economic security, decent work, and economic autonomy. As you know, COVID-19 has led to unprecedented challenges, and it's having severe impact in the world of works. The International Labour Organization predicts that in the final quarter of 2020, we will see a minimum of 8.6% drop in global working time. And that actually equals about 245 million full-time jobs. And COVID-19 risks putting gender equality efforts on hold and even reversing a lot of the progress that we have made in the recent decades. We also know that COVID-19 has a major differentiated impact on women and is putting women's health, economies, and personal security at a greater risk than before. For example, women are more employed than men in retail, accommodation, and food services, which all are business activities heavily affected by global lockdowns and also by layoffs. We also know that women are at the front line of the fight against COVID-19. The World Health Organization, for example, shows that women comprise 70% of the global workforce in the health sector, making them more exposed to the virus and to the heavily increased workload in the healthcare sector. I also want to mention to you that while governments' fiscal response to the economics effect of COVID-19 has been very quick and massive, in fact, we've had fiscal stimulus packages about $10 trillion, and we're still counting. But we're also aware that their responses have largely ignored the needs of women. Only 1 in 8 countries have measures in place to protect women against the socioeconomic impact of the virus. So the private sector has an unique opportunity to rebuild stronger and more efficient markets in the wake of COVID-19. So we need policies to ensure that women participation in the economy can promote diversity and growth, to reduce income inequality, to mitigate demographic shifts, to contribute to fiscal sector stability. And all this to create a stronger, more efficient, and more sustainable economic growth for all. So a commitment to a gender transformative COVID-19 response is indispensable for an inclusive economic recovery and to build back better and stronger. So during this time of transformation, these women empowerment principles that you will hear more about now in this webinar, they are a great resource for the private sector to target support to women across entire value chains. So I wish to underscore 3 reasons for why I think the WEPs are important for you. I mean, first, the principle, they provide a clear framework to align existing and new initiatives and to guide your company on the journey to improve and strengthen efforts for gender equality and women empowerment. And second, they are a valuable resource in creating gender transformative responses to the COVID-19 crisis and can help enable your company to be an important part in the economic recovery. And that is, for example, because the women empowerment principles, they address gender equality in the value chain. And third, the principles, they are a great visibility asset. So a tool for clearly demonstrating and communicating both internally in your company and also externally your commitment to gender equality and women empowerment. And that can also inspire others to action. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we need everyone to drive for gender equality. So we rely on businesses like yours to contribute to and to lead in building better, more inclusive societies. And we hope today's webinar will inspire you to take further actions and to promote gender equality and women empowerment in the work that you do. So thank you all, and I'll reveal back to Diana. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline. As you probably understood, Caroline is one of your #1 friends in the region to connect and to speak about gender equality, responsible business conduct, and everything you would like to know about engagement in this important agenda. Caroline mentioned that policies are important more than ever, and we speak about twofold: policies from governments and policies from private sector. And if I may say, Caroline, you are the right person to say so, because you are leading the Nordic liaison office since 2018, but prior to that, you have an extensive experience, as a chief of UN Women Humanitarian Unit in New York and UN Women Country Program Manager for Somalia. And prior to this position, Caroline served as senior advisor at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Denmark and senior social development specialist in the World Bank Group. So Caroline understands the dynamics, understands the importance of economic, social, political participation, and why private sector more than ever needs to become even a more important player. And we are so happy to see today so many participants that are interested in the agenda. So as you probably saw, this webinar is not a traditional one. The traditional one is that speakers will see each other and then we will be silent observers. But today we will invite you to go ahead and hear two important presentations, one on why the WEPs and another one where because of the WEPs. And then we will be able to interact. So if you want to include your camera afterwards, raise your hand to ask your question. You'll have an opportunity to do so. Thank you so much, Caroline, for kicking us off. And now I would like to invite the manager of Women Empowerment Principal Secretariat and also We Empower program, Anna Feld, to let us know more about WEPs and share with us all the details about the principles, about the engagement, and now about the framework. Anna, over to you.
Thank you so much, Diana. And if you could pull up the slides again, that would be very helpful. And thanks, Caroline, for your introduction and setting the stage for this conversation. So I'm Swedish myself, and I'm very excited to have this conversation with you. I think we have in many of the Nordic countries excellent policy frameworks and intentions, but we still see, and it was interesting last year, I was in a panel on the 8th of March, and at that same day, it was an article about the situation of gender equality in the Nordic countries and specifically Sweden. And I think there's still a lot to do in the private sector, even though it's led by a feminist government. And I think here is really, as both Caroline and Diana have already said, it's a huge role for the private sector to really help advance this agenda. So today I thought I'll go through briefly the principles, what they are, how you can engage with them, what other companies are saying about them, because I think we have our views from UN Women, what we think, why these are important, but I will share a few views from CEOs of some companies on why they think they're important, and a little bit about what it means to get involved with the women's empowerment principles, and in terms of the activities that we offer and the guidance and support that we offer to companies that do join our network. As a starting point, let me just go through the 7 principles. It's a little bit cut on my end, but I hope we can still go through them. There are 7 principles. The first one is one of the most important ones. We ask the CEO to make a commitment, that the CEO is the one that leads this. And the reason is we hear from all the companies that have successfully implemented the principles that what really made a difference is the CEO buy-in and the CEO leadership for gender equality and diversity and inclusion in the company. Without that, we are not going to be as successful. So the first one is very important, and it involves the high-level leadership. And that high-level leadership means that there is an action plan, there's a clear KPIs, there's a clear journey for the company on what's going to happen. So this one is very important. Principle 2, 3, and 4 are the workplace principles. So they focus on everything to do with HR, treating women and men fairly at work. It could be through recruitment, promotion policies. It can be around equal pay, parental leave provisions, and encouragement for people to actually use it fully. The principle 3 is more about health and safety at work. So that could be around machineries and around the workplace safety in general, but also it links to sexual harassment, support to women victims of domestic violence. So it has that whole spectrum of making sure that both women and men are safe. And then principle 4 focus both on the professional development of women, but also on training and education for the staff as a whole on gender equality. Principle 5 is our champion for engaging gender equality outside the company. So this one goes both from marketing practices, and we have an initiative called the Unstereotype Alliance, where companies come together and really push to remove gender stereotypes in advertising and marketing. But this is also the principle for buyers in companies that deal with the procurement and the supply chains, to make sure that what the company is doing is also touching its supply chain, and that the company helps create a gender sensitive ecosystem around them, that their business partners, their suppliers, everyone around them are also gender sensitive. And this is very important for the reputation of the company, but also to make sure that it has ripple effects in the economy. Principle 6 is engaging with women and girls in local communities where the company is operating. And this could be either by making sure that women and girls are consulted on the products and services that the company is producing. It can be to help build the future pipeline of women that might be the employees in 5 or 10 years. Many of those tech companies are definitely going out in local communities and helping to build, making sure that women and girls are part of the tech community, that they get STEM education. So there are many different reasons for engaging with women and girls in local communities and help to get their voices heard in the business community. And I said that the principle 1 was the most important, but principle 7 is equally important actually, because this is where what gets measured gets done. It's really making sure that whatever is done in the company, it's being measured and tracked so you can see the progress. And we have, and I will come to that a little bit later, but we worked with companies on case studies, and it's fascinating to see their timeline on, because they have measured, they could say, here was our baseline and here's where we are now. And even though the steps are small, you could see that the companies are going in the right direction. And we, I can go into that a little bit later when we talk about the process of becoming a member, but we ask companies to start thinking about 3 indicators from the outset, and that is the percentage of women in the company, the percentage of women leaders in the company, and the percentage of women in the executive team and or on the board, depending on the type of company. And then in December, we will also add a few more indicators for companies to consider. Nothing is mandatory, it's a voluntary. And we do believe that companies benefit from being transparent, because we see today that investors need this information to take good investment decisions. Consumers are paying more attention to who they buy the products from and love to see this information. But I think the group that is really looking for this information are the talent. Young people that have lead with their values and decide which company to work for based on certain criteria and how the company contributes to the sustainable development. I think we'll move to the next slide, Diana. Thank you. So instead of me saying what is important with and why the WEPs, I've picked out 4 industry leaders You will see on our website, Diana has already shared it in the chat link to the WEPs.org. You can see here that CEOs that have signed up, they have their photo and their quote. And what I picked up from Swedbank and Lego was basically companies see the women's empowerment principles as support to investing in the future and creating an equitable world. So that's the drivers of signing up with us. We can go to the next page. We have also, many of them see the women's empowerment principles, in this case, with Lee and Sienna. They see it as a blueprint. We've heard the words North Star. We've seen words like the global framework, but it basically, I think Carolyn also touched upon it earlier, it's really laying out the launch pad for activities that the private sector can take to help advance gender equality and women's empowerment. We also heard from Mats, the CEO from GSMA, that it's also very important as a network. We are a network of committed companies. Almost 4,000 companies have joined us by now. And it is a great network to convene, having conversations and see what works and what doesn't. We can go to the next page. So basically, we've had a few words that define the women's empowerment principles. There are 7, as I just said, but we can see it from so many perspectives. We heard about the North Star, about the blueprint, but we talk about it as a framework. It is a framework to help you and to help companies to implement the Sustainable Development Goal 5 on gender equality and women's empowerment, which is very broad and vast. And this one kind of helps you boil it down to 7 principles and 7 different areas to work, both as in the workplace, internal issues, in the marketplace, as I talked about the marketing and the supply chain, and in the community with local groups, women and girls in the local communities. It is also a journey, and I would come into that in a little bit. And we also heard from Carolyn, it's a partnership, and we heard from Mats from GSMA, it's a network. We are having presence in 141 countries. And as a Nordic citizen myself, I feel very bad that we don't have the Nordics in the top list of countries. We have Brazil leading the way, Turkey, Japan, India, US, and Spain in that order of the intensity of the work on the Women's Empowerment Principle. So I really hope that these series of webinars would really help us put some dark color to the Nordic countries here on the map. The journey, I mentioned the journey, and it is, we put it as a swirl because you start off with the first step is to consider. Of course, this webinar is the first opportunity for you to hear about it. Maybe you heard about it before, but what is important in this considering phase is to really get the CEO on board, get the executive team on board, and to really garner that internal support. If it is just about one person signing off, not much will happen. So we really think that this phase is very important, the consideration phase. Once you make the decision to sign, what is important in that phase is really to make that commitment public. Public both internally in the company, but also externally to those stakeholders that I just talked about that really care about this work. And we have, when you sign, you get a welcome package. I will go into a little bit more the process later on how to actually apply, but you get a welcome kit, and there's an opportunity to have a press release and to go out on social media with the CEO quote, etc. And we are there to support all the way. Once that is completed and you are now a signatory, we really encourage you to start working on the WEPs action plan. And there are many different ways to do that. We have a gender gap analysis tool, which kind of gives you ideas on what some of the expectations are, what you could be doing. And we're also here to support and guide you through that process. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we really encourage you to make sure that your business partners, vendors, suppliers are also bought into this agenda and is also leading the gender equality within the companies and in their supply chains as well. And the sustaining phase, so that's where we see the repeat. It's a never-ending swirl that we really hope that the work will continue. It's not considered that we at some point have come to the finish line. There's a lot of work to be done, and at least until 2030, when we hope to have achieved the Sustainable Development Goals. We can go to the next. So just some examples. We have all of these companies from across the world, and they're doing fabulous things. We can share these slides afterwards, but just some examples of what companies have been doing to really implement the women's empowerment principles. And here they had focused really on the Italian energy companies had problems getting women to apply and be shortlisted. So they really focused their attention on that area to really increase the percentage of women in the company. We had a French telecommunication firm that focused on technical training opportunities for women. If we can, yes, thank you. And which led to more women technicians being hired. We had a Spanish financial service company that really worked on the flexible work environment. What was very interesting here was that the women had to go home early from, not early, but regular hours, because they had to take the children from the daycare and from school, whereas the men were sitting and working till 9 p.m. And the only way to even the playing field for women and men was actually the company decided to close the doors at 7 o'clock. After 7, nobody could be in the company. And that was the only way to kind of take radical action to make sure that women and men have equal opportunities, and that you're not being seen as more committed employee because you're sitting there till 9 or 10 o'clock in the evening. We also have a British company that focused really on family leave policies and really helped men take more family leave. So what I want to say with this slide is really every company is unique. Every company has different challenges. And what we are encouraging companies to do is to focus on the main challenge and really zoom in on that area. So we are not asking anyone to come and work on the entire set of 7 principles at once, but really kind of start and see where the roadblocks are for having a more gender equal company. So just something that we provide, these are just some example of some guidance note that we have been working on in different areas that we have seen that there has been an interest, but also particular challenges. So these are focusing on gender responsive procurement. What does it mean to engage with in gender responsive procurement? Some tools for setting up a mentoring program in the workplace, and also around what actions can be taken to build inclusive boards with gender parity. We have also worked in this period since COVID started on some recommendations specifically on what could be done by companies in this period. The middle one is really about the shadow pandemic that we have, that we are talking a lot about, with the confinement in many countries have led to increased domestic violence, and some guidance around that. But what we also felt with the movement of the Black Lives Matters is that companies felt that they had to choose between one agenda over another. So you might feel that you might choose the anti-racism agenda or the climate change agenda. But what we are saying is you can do it both. You don't have to choose, and there are ways to kind of bring the agendas together through an intersectional lens. And I mentioned earlier, I won't go into details, but here is some of an excerpt from our website with different, we call them WEPs in action, that can get inspiration from other companies, what they are doing to implement the WEPs. So what's next in terms of becoming a signatory? The process is quite simple. The first, as I said, the CEO signs a CEO statement of support. It is a paper that is printed. The signature goes on the paper and is uploaded to an online form. And the online form is quite straightforward. We have guidance for how to complete the form if there's any unclarity, and we also, of course, here to support. Once you get notified that the application has been approved, we send out a welcome package. The welcome package has opportunities for press releases and social media cards and other communication tools. And we also have some key messages that can be helped and draw into those social media quotes, etc. And then we encourage all companies, after they become a signatory, to create their own company profile page, which basically is a place where you can see it below, where the CEO has his or her photo with a little bit about the company. And as we go forward, we will also make it possible for companies to create links to their annual reports and to reports around the what has been happening over the year. And guidance is there, of course, to see how to go through that. And again, we are here to support as well. Currently, we actually have, and they might be still timely, the deadline is on 19th of November. We have an award for companies based in EU or the G7, which also includes Japan, US, and Canada. And we are looking forward to applications to participate in this award. And it's not so much about what you have done as a WEP signatory, but what the company has done on gender equality and women's empowerment. So companies join us in different stages of their journey, some at their starting phase and see it as a starting point. Others have already completed work on gender equality, and this application, this award is rewarding companies for their action. So that is also available on our website. And yes, do you want to go to the next page, Diana?
I think this is the last one, Anna.
This is the last one. Okay, I thought I had one more. Okay, that's fine. So this is basically the women's empowerment principles in a nutshell. We are working closely with the Global Compact since and really kind of getting the movement going with companies committed to this agenda. And we think, and we heard from Carolyn before, we cannot do it without the private sector. We need you involved and help us drive this agenda in the workplace, marketplace, and community. So I'm happy to take questions and any comments or anything. Challenge, we love challenges too. So just happy to engage with the discussion after the next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. You are also very timely. This will allow us more time for discussion. So I know that we all need that, since especially that we are in the circle of friends today. So as Anna mentioned, companies that would like to share their example, they have several opportunities to do so. And today we have good friends of Women Empowerment Principle, represented by Lauren Bartley, Head of Sustainability and Corporate Social Responsibility at Ganni. They were one of those companies that did dare and share their experience, specifically on the Principle 5. I know that they do much more work and all about this will share in her presentation Lauren. Just to say that Lauren comes from previously working with business development management and soil association, where she was responsible for the development and market growth of a certified cosmetics and organic textile market in the UK. And she joined Ganni in 2018 as a head of sustainability and corporate social responsibility. So Lauren, over to you to share Ganni experience and what role WEPs brings to the gender equality and women empowerment policies at Ganni, how WEPs can provide a framework for the gender equality and women empowerment work in the workplace. Over to you, Lauren.
So much. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. I think it was really an honor. We signed the Women Empowerment Principles only in August of this year, so we're relatively new. So really today it's about sharing with you the journey of how we even got to signing in the first place, what some of our goals are internally around people and also around gender equality, and how we plan to work with the Women Empowerment Principles moving forward. And I think we can just move, to the next slide again. Just for anybody that's not familiar with Ganni, we are a female fashion brand based in Copenhagen, but with a global outlook. We also have offices in London and in New York, represented in around 600 retailers with 28 of our own stores. And to the left of this picture, you can see Dita and Nikolai, who are our co-founders of Ganni and have been since 2009. And I think we can just, perfect. So today I just want to talk to you about the ambition that we have. So some of the goals that we set ourselves really at the end of 2019. And the WEPs is obviously included in that. Where we are right now, what the makeup of Ganni looks like from a gender perspective, but also some other areas, and then where we're going. So how we intend to work with the WEPs moving forward. I think we can move on to the next one. Perfect. So in the end of 2019, we launched our Ganni game plan, which is basically a set of 44 goals for the next 3+ years across 4 areas. So it's people, planet, product, and prosperity that you can sort of see in the middle of this infographic. And we obviously have then a lot of goals on people, and our focus areas under people are culture, female, and responsibility. And if we just move to the next slide, just a little bit more of a deep dive into those people goals. So one thing for those that don't know, fashion supply chains are historically very long and complex, and a lot of fashion brands don't have a ton of visibility on their supply chain. So one of our ambitions is to have 100% traceability by 2022. And then also what comes with that is to define and embed a social responsibility within the supply chain. So what does that look like, and can the WEPs be a framework for social responsibility in the supply chain? The next one is a definition of, if we just go back one slide, thank you. A definition of the policies behind gender equality. And I think this, we were quite honest and public about it in our latest responsibility report that we published in April of this year, that we in the past, I think, we've always stood for gender equality, and as a brand that has a predominantly female customer base, and we are predominantly female led within the company, it was very natural for us to adopt SDG 5 and really say that we stood for gender equality. But what was kind of missing is the depth behind that. So where was the internal work? Like, where were the people policies on gender equality, and how are we actually moving the conversation forward on gender equality? So one of our goals was to set policies behind gender equality, and actually ambition was to sign the Women Empowerment Principles, which we did sign in August of this year. And then a similar story for diversity and inclusion. And then the last one, because we wanted to be more ambitious on gender equality, we also set a goal to commit to 3 initiatives per year to raise awareness of gender equality starting from 2020. So I think we can move on to the next one now. Yeah, perfect. So I just wanted to give you more of the facts and the statistics of the makeup of the company right now. And this is an exercise actually that we had to do to sign the women empowerment principles, which was great for us to actually have more visibility on the makeup of the company. So you can see that we're 90% female when we look at our direct employees at Ganni. And in terms of leadership, 71% female, and then directors is 58% female. So it's pretty impressive. But then here comes like kind of the risk area, because we were not measuring this before. And so what the Women Empowerment Principles has now done is enabled us to measure this information and then mitigate the risk that if we actually step back from this, then we're going to be aware of it now in a way that we wouldn't have been aware if the gender balance stepped back previously. Great. And then this is just to also talk about, we can't really now have a conversation around gender equality without mentioning intersectionality and actually making sure, you know, that marginalized groups are represented. And it's something that we have started to look at Ganni. And this is by no means that we have made progress in this area, but I just wanted to share with you that we fully recognize that we are an employer a high employer in Copenhagen, London, and New York, because that's where our offices are, and also where we have a lot of stores. And we can see in terms of ethnicity data in those cities that the percentages of people that either identify as white or people that identify as Black, Indigenous, or a person of color, we can see what these statistics are. And what we need to do now as an exercise is to, again, look at the makeup of Ganni from an ethnicity perspective to see if we really match up with these statistics. Like, does this reflect how Ganni looks internally? So that's kind of just another side piece of work that I think is really important to mention within the gender equality conversation. And then the third statistic is a bit of a similar story. So where we directly employ nearly 200 employees, we also indirectly work with a lot of people within our supply chain. And so I said in the beginning that one of our goals was to get this traceability on supply chain. And so there are approximately 5 stages of any supply chain, and we're really focusing on stages 1 to 3 right now. And you can see there's 130 suppliers within just 3 stages of our supply chain that we are trying to obtain information on. You can see that for stage 1, we have 100% traceability, for stage 2, around 96, and stage 3, 76%. And what we're actually asking these suppliers is, what is their gender split? And what we will talk a little bit more into further in the presentation is if we can use the women empowerment principles as a tool for social responsibility in the supply chain. So are the WEPs applicable in the supply chain? And, you know, our priority is to look at Ganni first and our own internal people policies and our work on gender equality internally. But is it something that could be applicable in the supply chain? Great, thank you. And then I think it was shown just briefly in the beginning, but we have conducted a case study with UN Women, which has now been published on the WEPs website. So I won't go, like, this is just obviously just an overview of kind of like where we are right now and why we signed, but that case study really goes into some of like the more tangible actions that we're taking across gender equality. So I really encourage you to have a read of that afterwards. But just to kind of like surmise why we've signed the Women Empowerment Principles, it's to, one, hold ourselves accountable. And then, as mentioned in the earlier presentation, it is to provide a framework and a focus area going forward, so we don't end up in an area of like potentially greenwashing or, you know, making big bold statements on gender equality but not backing it up with anything concrete and legitimate. And we also want to make sure that our work in this area is progressive, and so we really see the Women Empowerment Principles as that kind of framework that could lead us there. And through the case study that's been published online, what's kind of been identified is that there's 3 out of the 7 principles that seem to be a natural fit for Ganni and sort of the way that we're kind of working already, that we could really hone in on and do like a lot more detailed deep dive into those 3 principles and make positive change across those areas. So I'm just going to talk about what those 3 principles are. Perfect. So the first one, which is principle 2, which is to treat all women and men fairly at work and respect and support human rights and non-discrimination. And this just goes back to the people policies that we hold internally, and like the data that we have started to collect on gender split, on ethnicity, and in the supply chain, and really then setting KPIs. We're not at a position yet where we've set concrete KPIs of, now we have the data, what progress looks like and how we maintain progress. So that will be one of our biggest focuses with Principle 2. The next one is Principle 5, which is arguably maybe the most interesting, because we, for a while, have been looking into a lot of different social responsibility certifications within the supply chain, third-party audits and things like that. And we know from speaking to our suppliers and also our peers in the industry that maybe third-party audits from a social perspective with supply chains, it doesn't create a good relationship with suppliers. It doesn't create a feeling of trust. And actually, is it making any progressive change? And what we really want to explore is whether the women empowerment principles could be a framework where we look at ourselves first, we are fully aware of the areas of gender equality that we want to look into, and then we can kind of pass that on down the supply chain. And could we encourage some of those 200 suppliers to also sign the women empowerment principles and make progress on gender equality? And on the next slide, I just want to show an example. So this is Zutex. They're one of our denim suppliers in Turkey, and they've been a WEPs signatory since 2012. And you can see from their employee split, in 2012, they were 37% women and 63% men. And now in 2020, they're at a 50-50 split. And I do think that is in part with the women empowerment principles that you do need to report annually. And you also need to report progress. So you are also held accountable on that front. And the company's done so much work in this area, but I just wanted to highlight some of the 3 key actions that I really see that they've done. One is on equal pay to all employees, regardless of gender, and have some policies to ensure that that happens. They also do a lot of work on education of all subcontractors through gender equality, through an education program that they run. And then the last one is that they cover the cost of daycare for its female employees in accordance with the Child Care Act. So just 3 really tangible actions that supplier has managed to take. And I think for us as a brand, then it's quite clear that the women empowerment principles can potentially be a good solution towards social responsibility and gender equality within our supply chain. So our plan is to work with Zutex a lot more closely, and to really understand how they managed to put some of these actions into place and how we can take some of the learnings to share with other suppliers. And then the last principle, Principle 6, is to promote equality through community initiatives and advocacy, which I would say is an area that maybe Ganni was probably strongest in before. We did a lot of work and promotion around gender equality, but it's really obviously where our work is that internal work, as I've mentioned. But if we just flip to the next slide. So here, earlier in the year, we had a partnership with UN Women UK, and we donated 20% of our profits from a pop-up shop that we had, which equated to €40,000 to UN Women UK, that really supported their COVID relief fund. And then in the second picture, we've also worked with the UN Global Girls World Cup, and then they run like an annual football match usually, which we support. And now more recently, we are going to be creating face masks because of the pandemic, and 20% of the profits from the face masks will also go to UN Women. So that kind of work will continue. It's just to make sure that it's backed up, obviously, with a lot of internal work that's running along in the background. So that was everything. Hopefully I'm on time and that we have some time factored in for questions. Obviously, as I say, we don't by no means feel that we're an expert in this area. We just are sharing the journey as to why we think the Women Empowerment Principles was an important tool for us to use to advance our work on gender equality.
Thank you so much, Lauren. First question is, do you have shops in New York? Because I would love to support companies like Ganni, because I know they give back. So I think this is the same simple behavior that you get, first a behavioral response that you get from your customers. And then, of course, as Anna mentioned, it comes through the talent. It comes because we know Millennium Generation Z, they always prefer to go to the companies for their services and products that are responsible. And they care about the initiatives in their communities, in the workplace, and of course about the employees. So many things here to discuss. We have a kind request because it's so many of us from Nordic office. I feel like I'm now part of that community as well. If we can include those who would like the cameras and take some photos to have a good representation of all of us. And of course, we would love to post on social media about the webinar and about the wonderful work that you all and we all are doing. So those that feel comfortable to take a photo, please include the videos, and we will have a nice photo moment to see ourselves. And then please don't close it. We will stay connected and we will start our Q&A session. So thank you so much. It's so nice to see everyone. We have our colleagues who are helping us with some photos. So it will take a while. Maybe for the first one, 1, 2, 3. Now a second one. 1, 2, 3. And the third one. 1, 2, 3. I hope we are all set now here, and we can continue with the Q&A session. So those who would like to provide the audio question and share some remarks, please use the function of raising hand and we will give you an opportunity. If not, we will check our chat box and our Q&A box, and we'll see how we will go about this. We would like to take all the questions or as much as possible. So I see that we have some questions from Alina. Alina, would you like to share them via the audio?
I don't have any question. Hello. I just said great job, Ganni. I'm so happy to hear the presentation from Lauren.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you so
you.
much, Alina. So maybe Lauren, to start the discussion, and Anna also and Caroline, maybe you would like to also specify, knowing the business specifics in the Nordic countries, what do you think companies maybe don't know about women empowerment principles or any framework, SDG, that will help them to maybe look better for the frameworks and understand how to apply? Because Ganni is relatively a new women empowerment principle signatory, what you didn't know until August, but now you know more, but you would think the other companies will be useful to know.
Yeah, for sure. I think actually for probably the last 2 years, we've stood behind 3 of the SDGs. So gender equality, number 5 was one of them. And I think by looking at that SDG and some of the actions behind it, we kind of thought that would be our like guiding star and that would be the framework. And then quickly realized that actually it's still a little bit vague, and it is obviously it's not specific at all to any kind of industry, which makes total sense. It obviously tackles issues at a global level. And so when we did a little bit more research, obviously looking into the UN Women Empowerment Principles, it's a very structured framework, and actually really clear, gives us a really clear roadmap of where we can go moving forward. And I think that we were definitely hesitant to sign up to it pre-August, because you're held accountable and you have to report progress every year. And it's like, you know, when you look at our employee mix, it's already quite impressive. So, you know, we expected to increase it even more, but actually it's more about sustaining it. And we may have an impressive like gender split towards females, but actually that doesn't include, you know, as I mentioned earlier, like intersectionality, and also doesn't really look at the women in leadership positions and if that's a focus area. And it's also, you know, a happy coincidence that we have that gender split. It's not a strategic decision. And so by signing, it's making it a strategic decision and making sure we're held accountable and we can't move away from it. And then I think, yeah, to actually sign it since August, I think what's been probably the most overwhelming is the level of support that we've received from the UN and the Women Empowerment Principles. I think, yeah, we had the welcome pack when we joined, but also just the communication from like the various offices, also the Nordics, also the UK. Yeah, I think the level of support that's been there and the accessibility to people actually working on the Women Empowerment Principles has been amazing and quite unexpected.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Anna, Lauren mentioned about the reporting, and I think this is ordinary kind of point of hesitation for many companies, because this is the fact we need to report. And we always want to have a discussion to mention about the volunteer factor and about how is step by step we're developing these habits. And maybe you would like to expand a little bit about the reporting and about the information, what is visible to everyone, what is not visible, so that the companies will know that is mostly for them, for their policies and for their developments, rather than for others to know. Over to you, maybe to explain a little bit about this. Muted?
Yes. Thank you, Diana. I also wanted to touch upon one point that I didn't mention in the presentation that people might also not know about. So I'll tackle both. And I think with the reporting, I talked earlier about the importance of making the commitment public. And I think that that's really the starting point. And as I mentioned, it's not about being the best company at the starting point, but as Lauren also was saying, moving in the right direction, sustaining. And we have one really good case study from Swedbank where they're talking about they thought they made it on equal pay, and then the following year it slipped. So it's really kind of staying on course in making sure that their progress is moving forward and that the provisions that are putting in place are sustained. So, and I'd also like to take that opportunity to really congratulate Lauren. I think it's an amazing work that you've been doing, and really to engage with suppliers. That's very commendable. And I hope that any WEP signatories is taking this to heart and really engage with the entire supply chain and with all the business partners. But back on the reporting, so I talked a little bit about new indicators that will be added in December. There will be an option because we know that it can be scary for some people and for some companies to put it out there. What will the public response be? What will they say about it? It's not that good. It's not 50-50 yet. So we have an option to make it public or just reporting it into the platform to have that recorded. So there will be an option of making it public or non-public, but we'd really encourage, because I think that as long as the intention is there to make improvements, nobody will judge you for not being perfect. If the intention is we are now at 5% women, next year we'll try to get it to 10, that's good enough, because it means that the intention is there, that you're working in the right direction. So it's no way to kind of be in judging, but more as a tool to really help you understand that how to make progress and how other companies are also faring in this. And if you look at the website, if you go to the weps.org/companies, you will see that not every company is perfect. And there are lots of them that haven't that great record, but it's because they've been bold and said, you know what, we know where we are and we know where we're heading, so we're happy to put that out. One point that I wanted to add also that I didn't mention in the presentation, and that might be useful also for some of the talent in your companies and yourself. I think Diana and I have been working on this in the past few months, and we are benefiting it no matter who we are, is a series that we have come up with that we call Boost Yourself. So this is really to help young women and men, for that matter, to help them with boosting their confidence, assertiveness, finding themselves in the team. And from UN Women perspective, we really hope that this will also help us develop very strong champions for gender equality, that with these skills, that these people who have taken those boost courses, and we have a few webinars that we've been doing on the side as we're developing these online courses, would really help them to stand up for what they believe in and get their voices heard. So that was one thing that I didn't mention in the presentation. There's a lot of hidden gems, I think, from the work that we do. But we also love to engage with you on these boosters and see how we can help empower young women to stand up for this agenda as well.
Thank you, Lauren and Anna. We have an interesting question from Feline. I hope I pronounced the name correctly, and if you know, apologies. So thank you for the event and speakers sharing their work. I would like to hear more about the implementation of those principles across supply chain and its potential to create more equality. So Lauren, you mentioned in the presentation something, and it was about testing. Celine is asking if you have any examples of, or Anna, I know you led the guidance note on procurement, and gender responsive procurement. So if you would like probably to start a little bit expanding about the supply chain and gender responsive procurement, if any test is required, and some maybe guidelines on this, and then Lauren will continue with more practical examples from Ganni.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I have a few examples with companies that we worked with on this particular issue. I'd like to start from a different perspective, which is the perspective of an investor. So we work very closely with FinDev Canada, which is one of the development finance institutions. This one in particular from Canada, but I know also other of the DFIs are working in a joint group to really forward this agenda. But they are using the women's empowerment principles with their investees. So they say, if we are going to invest in you and to make sure that we feel our investment is safe and less risky, we would like you to sign the WEPs, and we would like you to tell us what actions you will take. So this is one way to really make sure that investments are as a risk mitigation action, basically. But we also have companies, and we worked, for example, with Procter & Gamble, Accenture, Citibank, and others that came up on stage at a big event and said, we are making a commitment to source $100 million worth of products and services from women entrepreneurs. So they made that commitment, and then we worked with them to help identify who those women entrepreneurs were in different markets. So we worked with Procter & Gamble specifically in Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, and Pakistan to help identify, to make their commitment go live, to make sure that they had access to these women entrepreneurs. We also encourage, and as you will see when you read the guidance note on gender responsive procurement, we also encourage companies to not only buy from women entrepreneurs, which of course helps the promoting women in business, but also to look at companies that are potentially led by men that are having a strong footprint for gender equality. So we're also looking and encouraging companies to buy from companies that are also signatory to the WEPs and have taken strong action. So a dual perspective. The other one is Unilever that we also worked with in Asia. And we developed a learning program so that they, on the one hand, we developed the entrepreneurial skills of women entrepreneurs in Indonesia. At the same time, then they would get access to these business women so that they could be a win-win from the partnership with women that know have the skills to run a business and really take them from the informal sector and help them formalize their businesses to then Unilever that then benefited from having better access to these women. And I can go into many more examples, but I think this might give a perspective from different dimensions, from different markets, but basically how we can go about and use the WEPs as that kind of launch pad for different actions.
Thank you, Anna. And Lauren, you mentioned earlier that the case study was specifically on Web 5 on creating gender equality in fashion. And I know we have the colleagues that collaborated with you on that. I would like to recognize Lisa, Sarah, Madison, and Oliver for great collaboration. It's really a nice piece of work, and the question couldn't be more exciting because it was just published. So I think this is why, and also it's a relatively new work for Ganni, where you are doing this for a while. So maybe you can share a little bit to Philip's point.
Yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, we go into a little bit more detail within the case study. So please, yeah, definitely check it out. But yeah, I think as I mentioned in the presentation, we have one supplier that has been actively working with the WEP since 2012. So it provides a good, a good example of where it actually can work within the supply chain. As I say, this is a new area for us and a new piece of work. So our priority right now is obviously obtaining that supplier traceability information and really, we know that we're looking at around 200 suppliers. It's a huge, huge piece of work. And what we're now asking is the gender split of those suppliers. So obtaining that data will be really imperative to inform our next steps moving forward. And although we don't have it quite figured out right now, I assume the way that we'll go is to work strategically with a few suppliers that maybe, depending on what their gender split is and the ones that are actually open to it, and try and see how we can implement the women empowerment principles within their factories, within their businesses, and in the supply chain, and using Zutex as that shining example of the supplier that's managing to do it really well. But yeah, it's definitely a new area for us, and we see it as more progressive and more tangible than looking at some of these third-party social compliance audits that are currently existing within fashion supply chains. And for those that obviously don't work in the garment industry, the statistic is that approximately 80% of workers in the garment industry are female. So we also need to understand if the makeup of Ganni's suppliers is reflective of that as well.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I see, Anna, you have a raising hand.
Yeah, no, I just realized I forgot, as Lauren was speaking, I forgot to mention that we had also, as one example, a session where all of those partners that I mentioned, Accenture, Citi, and EY and P&G, they invited all of their suppliers into a session, and then we had kind of a training about the women's empowerment principles. So there are many ways that we can work with you on this and really kind of get the words and invite your suppliers. And it was very exciting because many of them we saw were actually in the room were men, and they hadn't really thought about these issues before. So we are happy to be the broker of that knowledge. And yeah, whether it's virtual, and I won't make a commitment for Carolyn, but Carolyn, maybe there's an option to do something with in Copenhagen as well. but otherwise we're happy to also support virtually.
Thank you, Anna. So it's a perfect segue to the questions that we had in mind. Today, this is the first session, specifically envisioned for the Nordic countries. And the next session, we have it on scheduled for the date of 14th of December. So to be more useful for all of our partners and collaborators and all of you, we wanted to ask which principle is most interesting to you and or you would like to know more about. So it will be very helpful for us to understand it. You can make the judgment that, okay, I work in this area and this is more important. Well, we already have the initiative and this is more important. We don't have any policy on this and we would like to be more informed. So either way, it's a correct judgment. For us, it's important to understand the level of information you would like to know. And in this specific question is what principle. And then this session was a general one, informational one. So we would like to now receive via the chat box the questions that you would like us to respond during the next session on the 14th. If you don't have a question right now, please feel free to connect with us via webs@unwomen.org, via colleagues in Nordic Liaison Office, or via our collaborators via UN Global Compact Network Denmark. All of us are here to support, to share the information, and we of course are meeting, are preparing this session together. So doesn't matter with whom you connect, the information is coming to the hub. So thank you so much for sharing these thoughts with us. So one is the principle, and second are the questions, particular questions that you would like us to respond in the session on the 14th of December. And this said, we maybe I can share the results, and you'll see that a lot of you are interested in the principle number. I mean, it's relatively equal interest in principle number 2, 4, 5, and 7, which is a balsam for our heart to know that a lot of the companies would like to understand more or learn more or even provide reporting at the current stage. And as Lauren mentioned, majority of the companies are starting with a community initiative and employee health and well-being and safety. I think this is something that is very developed in the Nordic countries initiatives. And it became even more important during the COVID times. So we do understand the interest for this area. So thank you so much, everyone. Now it's my pleasure to invite Sarah Kroger-Falk, Executive Director at UN Global Compact in Denmark, to deliver the closing remarks. Sarah has more than 15 years experience working with partnerships, corporate responsibility, and sustainability. She is the Executive Director of Global Compact Network Denmark and has previously worked with partnerships and sustainability for Confederation of Danish Industry and Ministry of Foreign Affairs Denmark. Sarah, thank you for joining the session with from the beginning. And I know that it's always so exciting to jump in. So if you have maybe some thoughts on the question that was also addressed, we'd love to hear your opinion along with the closing remarks. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Diana. And thank you to everyone joining us today, and especially to all of you in UN Women and Lauren for presenting your excellent case from Ganni. I think it's a very important topic we're touching on, and I'm very thrilled that we can bring this to the Danish business community. We need to acknowledge that there's also an issue around women and gender in Denmark. And now I'm just focusing on Denmark because I know we invited our Nordic colleagues as well, but I know that a lot of you are Danish, representing Danish companies. And according to the World Economic Forum Gender Gap 2020, Denmark actually dropped down to 14th place, which is, in my opinion, very sad, because we have this idea that we have gender equality here in Denmark and that there isn't any problem, but there is. We dropped down from number 8 in 2006, and we're behind countries like Nicaragua and Nigeria, just to give you a picture. So we actually have to step up here. We're also behind all our Nordic fellow sister Nordic other countries in the Nordics, like Sweden, Norway, Finland, Iceland. And according to the gender gap index, Denmark is on top on educational attainment. So we have a lot of well-educated women here, but we are getting this lower position because our share of women in top management is not very good. The equal pay is still an issue, and then we need more political empowerment. So we have a lot to do. We also right now in Denmark experience a lot of media attention on the Me Too development. We had a political party leader stepping down due to the Me Too movement, and a lot of focus on equal access to power in the political parties, because it's often connected to staying up late, having discussions over a beer. And if you have sexual harassment or sexual issues there, then women tend to step out and go to bed and not continue. And that leads to less power. So I think we also have to acknowledge that there are many levels in talking about this. I was so happy that you, Anna, mentioned all this about start measuring, start looking at yourself. And you, Lauren, came with these very tangible examples on how you've been doing this in Ganni, counting how many women do you have where, what's the number of white people compared to others, and just trying to measure and looking at yourself, and you will acknowledge things that you were blind to see before you started counting. And I think that's a very, very important first step when we need to work with this. I also think that this focusing on the global supply chains are so important. Caroline mentioned how many of the global supply chains are very hardly hit by the COVID pandemic. And I think we as companies in Denmark and in other countries really need to also step up and look at the global supply chains and what we can do to support them. And many women are very hard hit because they have low wage jobs around the world. So a lot to do, and so great to have all you people gathered. I think it was very inspiring to hear those insights, and I'm thrilled that we will continue the dialogue. As you mentioned, we're doing this in partnership. So from the Danish Global Compact Network, you're so welcome to call us, and we'll definitely continue the dialogue with Lisa and Diana and Anna and Caroline and everyone at UN Women, because I think this is a good first step, and let's get moving. So thank you, Diana, for giving me the word.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I think that next session, which we will have, I'm also trying to, on the 14th of December, we will even probably be more specific, because we will receive all of these questions. We know the interest. Please reach out to your co-workers, the companies that didn't come, but you think it will be useful for them. We will be happy to have as much as possible, because the information needs to be already shared, and we are always happy to do so. And during the presentation was mentioned that we also have many of capacity building and events, and special sometimes for women empowerment principle signatories, but now you are part of our friends, whether you signed or not, and we would wanted to share with you, just to understand what is upcoming, and be as much informed as possible. Remember the journey, considering, please take as much as time as you need. Ask us questions. So, for example, On the 12th November, we have a learning session on enhance your skills to pivot your career. It's not only connected with the women empowerment principles, as we know, learning, re-entry in the workforce, and so many, but also it's important for us as an employee to keep up to the pace and to, develop always our skills, especially in view of lifelong learning. And what COVID also showed us is it's not enough only to be ready with the future of work, but it's happening right now, right here. Who would imagine that we will be, 7 or 8 months working from home remotely? 1 year ago was still the future. Then on the 18th of November, in partnership with MasterCard, we have an exclusive private film screening about the justice of pie, a bakery in Chicago, women entrepreneurs, their problems, and how they are overcoming this. So women voices and sharing the stories, this is something that we care deeply about. And we also do care about your feedback, and to make us more organized, and we would appreciate your feedback. So we would like to know after the session on this informational session on women empowerment principle, how informed are you with the topic? And if the results are not so good, we will do our best to include more information, maybe more practical ones, since this was a general session. So we will appreciate your feedback. Thank you so much for taking 30 seconds to respond. And we have, yes, we did a good job. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Anna, Caroline. So we have one more question. Let me see. And it's the satisfaction level. We would like to know if the information was received well and if you are satisfied about it. If not, please reach out to us and let us know. Do you want more case studies? Do you want more practical example? Maybe we can do scenario work. We can divide ourselves in groups. We can be innovative and creative. We are not afraid of challenges. Just let us know. While everyone is choosing their answer, I would like to say a very special thank you to Caroline, to Sarah, to Lauren, and to Anna for joining today and to share their views and experiences. Thank you so much to all of you, our participants. I know there are so many competing events, and you chose this today to join us for 1.5 hours. We are deeply grateful. Thank you so much to everyone. Please keep in touch and stay well, stay safe. We will see each other again on the 14th of December. We will share the recording. We will share the PowerPoint presentation. And if you have anything else that you think that it's good to share, the links to guidance note, to the case study, we will be happy to do so. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good afternoon and a good day.